Well, here we are again. I finally found the source of the miss. I actually found it a while back, but I just decided to do something about it. So what the problem was is I had a lifter that was ticking when I first got the car, and I finally tightened it up a little bit, and then found out that the lifter was collapsed. So here is the replacement. I'm just going to do the one because this is all I've got money to do at the time. So let's get started. Okay, they got the intake manifold off and one valve cover, and this is the lifter right here, or right down in here, that is bad. So just from what I have learned, you can get the whole intake manifold off, but in one piece. But you have to take this. This is the purge. A solenoid valve that pulls the fuel vapor back into the tank. Some sort of vacuum line on this side. So you'll have to take this bracket off for the alternator and AC pump. You'll have to take. You need to take this off. This is the throttle cable holder. And this is the EGR valve, vacuum valve, and this little bracket here is pretty flimsy, so you may have to work with it to get it off. And you see I broke this vacuum hose here. It's pretty brittle. This plastic ones break after being this old. So you can see that this is the I'm sure you can get the idea that this thing's pretty nasty. That is some trash that fell in. I was taking the intake manifold off. Probably a little bit of silicone. You can see the intake runners are pretty nasty. So it looks like the intake bolts were not even on tight. So I'm sure it's been sucking oil into the intake ports. So alright, as you can see, the inside of this thing is it's just black, full of carbon and stuff. So here's the bottom side of it. Is got carbon buildup, and this is the let's see if I can get this right. This is the intake runners. They're pretty nasty. So I'm going to go ahead and pull this all apart and get it all cleaned up. Alright, so I got the lifter out, and all you do is you just pull this thing up, move it out of the way. And I just got a pick and pull it out. So what I can tell is this one I can't push down on the middle part, and I can on the new one here. So that tells me that this one is not necessarily collapsed, but it's seized up. So I don't really know. Either way, it's not working. So go ahead and drop the new one in. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's put some oil on it first. Okay, so I got a little, just put a little 30 weight oil on it, and put some in here and just smear it all over. So go ahead and it's only going to go in there one way. So alright, I got it back in there. It just needed a little, had to get it there just right since the tolerances are so tight. So I got the rocker arm back on, so it took about a total of a minute. So right now I'm going to work on getting the head faces cleaned up and getting the intake ports cleaned out. And that intake manifold is going to require at least a 24-hour bath and some super clean or some sort of degreaser to get all the crap off. Alright, so the intake manifold is relatively clean compared to what it was. So I did do a little light sanding on the intake ports to get that rough cast finish off. And what I used was, this is just an extension for a Phillips screw bit, or a screw bit for a drill. And I just took some sticky sandpaper, wrapped it around there a few times, and just with a drill just went around and just kind of sanded it off. It seemed to work halfway decent, and then I just did the rest of it by hand. Took a little file and got down in here in these corners and got the rough casting out of these corners. So got the gaskets on there, and I'm ready to put it all back together. All right, got everything back together and cranked it up, and it runs. So I'm going to let it sit overnight before I put the valve cover back on. I'm going to make sure that I'm going to run it for a little bit and make sure that lifter starts pumping oil. I didn't run it long enough to see if it would, but it ran long enough to pump up. So one thing you want to do before you put this all back together is I went and borrowed a bore scope from a friend of mine, and Bruce, the same guy I borrowed the O2 sensor tool from, and looked down inside the intake runners before I put everything back together, because there was a little piece of plastic that fell off one of these brittle connectors down in there. So I was able to get the shop vac and get it sucked out so it didn't fall down in the combustion chamber. So I think we're good. So later.